Good afternoon. By now, many of you know that on Monday night, the village board decided to take legal action against the governor. We did not take this action lightly. We have tried numerous times to engage the governor. I sent letters to the governor on April 10th, 17th, and 24th, May 5th, 8th, 19th, and 28th, as well as June 3rd and 4th. The village board passed 4 resolutions on May 4th, 8th, 18th, and June 1st that were sent to the governor. To date, we received 1 email simply stating the correspondence from May 5th was received. I personally responded back, and I have heard nothing else. The governor and his team refused to enter into a dialogue, but our efforts were clearly not in vain. Several mayors and I asked for many businesses to be open in the April 10th letter. They were all at least partially opened on May 1st. We sent the village's reopening plan on April 24th and passed a resolution on May 4th asking the governor to provide us with a plan. He presented that plan on May 5th, and over 90% of it mirrored the plan we sent on April 24th. We passed a resolution asking the legislature to go back into session on May 5th. The legislature went back into session on May 20th after an over 10-week absence. Several of our letters and resolutions asked the governor to open restaurants as part of Phase 3, and on May 19th we passed an ordinance to allow outdoor dining at our restaurants. On May 20th, the governor said he would include outdoor dining as part of the Phase 3 reopening. It was a start. Those people who have disagreed with our decisions have cited 2 things. First, that the governor is following data and science. I disagree. In fact, we have asked for the governor to share the data that he is using to make decisions in 5 of our letters and 3 of the resolutions. He has yet to do so. When pressured to release his data and science by elected officials, and even some of the media, the governor and his team resort to personal attacks, like saying that people who disagree are going to cause people to die, that they don't care about people's health, or that they are not medical experts. In my experience, people that resort to ad hominem attacks, rather than debating the issue with facts, have something to hide. The governor and his team have provided some statements about the number of lives saved, cases avoided, etc., that made it possible to reconstruct the curve that they were using to justify their decisions. I have shown that this curve and their statements indicate a case fatality rate of 26.5%, 6.5% higher than any known hospitalization rate. In short, it is an exaggeration and flat out wrong. The facts are that since moving to Phase 3, cases and hospitalizations continue to decline as they have for over a month. This in spite of a lack of social distancing associated with protests, riots, and looting that began over 2 weeks ago in the region, even with the governor in attendance at a protest with over 1,000 people. The percentage of positive cases has continued to decline as well. Moreover, ICU and ventilator usage has decreased significantly and availability is well beyond the threshold required. Those are the facts, and I have shown them to you. Long-term care facilities now represent 54% of all deaths, while representing only 16% of cases. Moreover, long-term care facilities have an over 16% case fatality rate. The remaining cases have a CFR of less than 2.6%. The second piece of pushback from the governor is that he is using the CDC recommendations. That is not true. The governor is not using the CDC recommendations. In fact, if he was following the CDC recommendations, restaurants would be open for indoor dining now as part of Phase 3, as the CDC recommends. The Restore Illinois plan would be using 14 days between phases rather than 28 days, as the CDC, the WHO, the federal government, and every expert we can find recommends, which would mean we would be in Phase 4. The same metrics would be used for each phase, including the final phase that completely reopens, as the CDC recommends. Instead, the governor's current metrics for Phase 5 likely mean that we will never leave Phase 4. No weddings or funerals for more than 50 people, no baseball games, no Bears games, etc. This is because it requires a vaccine, which may never happen, an effective treatment, which also may never happen, or eradication. We have eradicated only one virus in the history of humankind, smallpox. Lastly, vulnerable populations would be required to stay at home, and nursing homes could not allow visitors until we are completely reopened, as the CDC recommends. The fact is that we have been the ones requesting the governor follow the CDC recommendations, which he refuses to do. His unwillingness to modify his plan to follow the science leaves us with 3 choices: do nothing, open on our own, or file a lawsuit. Doing nothing is not an option. It will not protect our vulnerable populations, something the state has failed to do, and it will destroy our way of life. Opening is what we should be doing, but there are significant risks, especially when dealing with a governor who has proven to be quite vindictive. The state has licensing authority over many businesses, and the governor has threatened businesses and even our village. He has threatened the municipalities with a loss of funding and stated, quote, "Failure to execute or enforce the executive order could be considered noncompliance with the agreement condition to comply with all applicable state laws, regulations, and policies, thus placing the applicant's funding in jeopardy." The state legislature followed through with this part of the threat. Approximately $800 million was earmarked for local governments. The legislature reduced it to $250 million and specifically excluded municipalities in 5 counties from receiving the money, including our counties of Cook and Will. He had the Secretary of State pull out of Orland Park after they indicated they were moving into a temporary location in Orland Park in preparation of building out a facility with more services. He threatened businesses with eliminating their licenses. Quote, "Businesses should also be informed that state licensing agencies, example, Illinois Liquor Commission, Illinois Gaming Board, Illinois Department of Financial and Professional Regulation, and Illinois Department of Public Health may become involved should they reopen prior to authorization from the governor." He threatened businesses owners with jail time. Quote, "ISPs, Illinois State Police protocol, include a misdemeanor criminal enforcement option against businesses and business owners that persist in violating the executive order. In good conscience, we cannot put our businesses in this situation. We did, however, take the action to open our playgrounds, fully open our fields, and open our recreation facilities that do not have state licensing requirements. In our opinion, this is as far as we could push without facing retaliation. That leaves us the third option, which is litigation. We try to dialogue with the governor and are getting nowhere. We asked the legislature to do their jobs and act, and they did not. Since these measures have been exhausted, it leaves us with the final option, according to the Constitution, the courts. The reasons for doing this are much bigger than opening restaurants or moving to Phase 4. It is fundamental for our democracy. The governor has the authority to declare an emergency for 30 days. We are now in day 99. This is unacceptable. The legislature should have stepped in and done its job, but they've refused. The governor has demanded that local municipalities enforce his emergency declaration. By law, this is not allowed. The state emergency authorities are the only agencies with enforcement power. The governor has tried to have his agencies implement regulations that would allow him to imprison business owners trying to earn a living. Even more importantly, if the metrics for Phase 5 do not change, we will likely never move to Phase 5. This means no high school football games, no professional sports with spectators, no conventions, no groups of bigger than 50. We cannot allow one person to permanently alter our way of life without ever having to show his data or prove he's making the right decisions. The current restrictions for schools will make it nearly impossible for children to return to school outside of distance learning. This is unacceptable. Personally, I will not live that way, and this issue is worth the fight. We have tried doing this without the court's help, but we now have no other choice. I want to reiterate that we do not take this decision lightly, and I'm aware that I will likely be attacked by some because we took this action. However, as I have said many times, I will always do what's right for the people of Orland Park, regardless of the consequences, and I will tell you why I'm doing it. I am thankful that the board has agreed with me. I do not believe in putting my finger in the air to see which way the political winds are blowing. I think the case for taking this action is clear, so does the village board. Legal action is always a last resort, but we have exhausted our other options. This is the right thing to do on behalf of the people of Orland Park. It's that simple. It's time for the state and Orland Park to move forward. Thank you.